Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people-pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. And before we begin, I want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am recording from, which is the Gubbi Gubbi tribe. And I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay. Hi, lady love, and welcome to the very first episode of the potty for 2025. It is a very, very, very exciting time in my coaching business right now. Not only because it's the first episode for the year, we're actually so close to the 100th episode of the Gemma Hanley podcast, which is mind-blowing. And I have something very fucking exciting brewing for that episode. Still some details to be locked in, but continue to watch this space. I can't wait to share it with you when I can. And this month, Reveal and Rise is turning 4 years old, which is just also insane. We're heading into our 5th year of transforming the lives of women in intimate, beautiful, safe, connected, liberating community alongside each other. And it is easily one of the most sacred creations I've ever done. And also one of my most proud contributions as well, by far. I I can't stand behind things that I don't believe in. One of the things that I constantly have reflected back to me by the people in my life, my personal life, is that I know exactly what I need, I know exactly what I want, and I know exactly what I believe in. And so the fact that we are now going 5 years deep into Reveal and Rise really does demonstrate how much I believe in it and how proud of it I am. So I feel like there are gifts and bonuses and prizes and freebies just going left, right, and center to celebrate Reveal and Rise turning 4 this month. I'm still pulling it all together, but it's all available right now. You're going to be hearing about it in quite a few different spaces. But some of the things that I'm doing to celebrate is that any woman who joins me and the stunning community of just brave, bold, beautiful women embracing both their mess and their brilliance as they journey through their inner work. Anyone that decides to join us in January, you're getting $500 off, or you're getting to add an extra month for free. And you are also going into the draw to win one of, or maybe more, an hour with me that you can spend however you want. We can talk about, cover, look at, explore whatever is most relevant for you for an hour. I am also giving away a personalized self-hypnosis track. This is something that I don't really talk about this so much, but I do it myself. I'm about to do mine for 2025, where you could pick a topic, or you could do it generally across all the key areas of your life. I'll send you a whole heap of questions. You'll send me some answers back, and I'll create a self-hypnosis recording for you that you can listen to each day. And such an easy, effortless way to reprogram our subconscious and just bring our beliefs and automate our habits without having to do anything other than hit play and listen. It's pretty fucking cool. I'm also giving away free access to my short course, standalone short course called Responding to Overwhelm, Fear, and Anxiety. It's got 7 different teaching lessons, action steps, and guided somatic practices in there. It's such a good way to get a tiny taste of what it's like to work with me, but also to just have this library of extra tools in addition to Reveal and Rise and different guided practices. So all of that's going down. And the first woman who joins, she's getting a bonus that I'm not going to share here because I want it to be such a surprise, but that's going to be on top of all of this. I've also got something happening for past clients and current clients. So if you fit into that category and you're listening to this, please know something is coming your way as well. And I'm getting playful. I had this drop in whilst I was in the shower the other day about how um, I can maybe even gift something to a special someone in your life as well if you're a past and current client. So I'm working with that and bringing that into the mix. And if you don't know, Reveal and Rise is my intimately sized 4 month or longer group coaching program where you get one-to-one attention. So you have access to one-to-one coaching from me in a very small group of women. It's a women's circle vibe. And community, very, very active. You've got daily access to me. Everything is individualized and personalized. Numbers are capped. Um, and so given numbers are capped and this is intimate, there's a pretty high chance that you'll be lucky when you go into the draw to win some of these epic prizes and gifts. So I'll pop a link in the show notes if you want to find out more about Reveal and Rise. These offers, bonuses, party gifts, they're all available until the 31st of January only, and then they will all end. They will not be available. So I'll pop a link in the show notes with all the details, but also apply and book your free clarity call where you and I can jump on Zoom, have a video chat, completely obligation free. I will ask you lots of curious questions because I want to understand you. I want to get to know you. I want to figure out what it is that you need. And then together we'll get to understand whether or not I'm the right person to help you with that. And you can ask me any questions as well. I think it is so important that you feel that the coach, the therapist, whoever it is guiding you through this intimate space of your inner work is someone that you can trust and somebody that you like as well and who walks the talk. They actually live what they're teaching. So there's some of the exciting things going down in my world right now. For those of you watching on YouTube, you'll be like, why is she holding her phone? My microphone broke last year. I've bought some newbies and I cannot wait to get them set up. Very, very cool. Also going to help me with vlogging. I have such a backlog of vlogs to hand over to my team. Need to get to that at some point also. But they're just taking so long to set up. So I'm recording this one again through the microphone on my phone because it just wasn't good enough on the laptop. So to answer that question, if you're watching along on YouTube, I'm sitting under the aircon in my bedroom recording through the iPhone microphone. Now you've got all the answers to your questions. So let's dive in. I love this topic of permission to follow your intuition at the start of the year. You know what? And if you've listened to the last 2 podcast episodes where I ran you through 2 workshops of how to review last year and how to set goals or intentions for this year ahead, you'll have heard me say this. Like, if the calendar year ticking over does not feel inspiring and fresh and liberating and uplifting to you, good. Don't try and make it that way. Like, stay in your own lane and be where you're at. You can set goals any time of the year. You can set them in February, you can set them in May, like whatever feels good for you. But what I'm wanting to do in this episode is really capture some of that freshness and some of that blank slate energy that can come with the turning of a calendar year and really help you to tune into your inner knowing, your inner wisdom this year in a more powerful, trustworthy way than you ever have before. because that is where change happens. That is where the magic of life is created. And I want you to have more of that. We're going to start this conversation with how our intuition often, very often, especially if it's newer to you, tuning into your intuition and letting that lead your decision making or your direction, it can feel like your intuition defies logic. So it doesn't make sense, doesn't make good sense, it's not logical. And often it can also lead to you making choices that are quite unpopular. And I'm going to use myself as an example here because, because it's kind of, I've had this experience in the last few weeks and I didn't expect it. People really not being on board with the decision that I've made. And as you can probably hear in my voice, I'm at a stage with this now where I mostly find it entertaining. Um, it's especially entertaining when you're not expecting it. And I just love human behavior and human psychology, and it just reveals so much about how different we all are and what makes us tick and what we value and what's important to us, which is beautiful. It really is. So, a few things I want to talk about in this process of following your intuition when it's not making sense or it is an unpopular decision in the crowd around you, or you're not seeing it reflected back, right? Last year, I spent less time on social media than ever before. Some of that was chosen, and some of it was because I had a really bad flu. And I was like, I'm focusing on me. I'm healing. I'm recovering this. And Instagram was not important to me in that time. I also reduced quite a few significant coaching commitments last year in my business to restructure things for a number of reasons. And they were unpopular choices, right? Like people didn't agree with me. They couldn't understand why I was doing it. Some people tried to change my mind. And so this is what can come up when we follow our intuition and let it lead our decision making, because you can't churn out a report that explains factually why it is that you are doing a certain thing at times. And that's difficult for other people. Now, whilst I had decided that I was going to India in 2025, I thought it was going to look different and I thought it would be at the end of the year. Anyway, November last year, I was sitting in a training with my meditation teacher, and the conversation around this pilgrimage was coming up. And I could tell at a soul level that I was already going on that trip. I had not logically or in my mind gotten on board yet, right? It felt so inconvenient. It definitely did not make sense financially. Like, very inconvenient, feels like a big risk, not great timing. So that was one of the big things. Another is that it's over Harry's birthday. So it's not the most ideal, but, in terms of how much we support each other and the height of how important this is for me to do at some point in the next 12 months. We're just always so supportive and encouraging of us being able to go out into the world and express and live a life that lights us up and fulfills us individually as well as together. So that was probably a bigger thing for me than it was for him. He was like, fucking book it. I probably would have also had the question running through my head of like, oh, like, what's this going to mean for my business? Like, is it set up for this? And like, ironically, something that I just shared before about the changes I made in my business last year. One reason for that was it was just undeniable to me how alive I feel when I'm in Reveal and Rise, and that I just want to continue making that even better. So that was one part of it. Another part of it was looking toward motherhood and how I want to parent and how available I want to be and how flexible I want my days to be. And I want motherhood to lead my focus in the day, not my business. And the third was actually because this India trip, and think I'm going to share something I will have shared by the time this podcast episode goes live. I'll have shared a post on Instagram about where this has come from. But I first learnt that I was going on this India trip a decade ago. I can remember clear as day, um, chronic fatigue, housebound. It went on my vision board. And I didn't know particularly why. It was an intuitive drop in and a calling that I was feeling. And there was no, and never has been since then, imminent plan or, yeah, hard or rigid idea of what it was going to look like or when it was going to happen. I definitely knew that I wanted to go, in the last couple of years, especially, I wanted to do it and I wanted to go before having children. But other than that, no, there was no real plan around it. And so, yeah, when it popped up on my radar last year, I already had started making these changes in my business. So that was another piece to it, but I got to realize, oh, actually, that is possible. It still feels inconvenient. It still feels risky, but it is definitely possible. And so these are just some of the examples of, how an intuitive hit or like a drop in can be so easy to resist or push down or dismiss or just want to bat away, because it's not convenient and it doesn't make sense. And sometimes it feels like it's asking us to tip our lives upside down or explore a direction that feels unknown and uncertain, and that we would maybe have to learn new skills or open our hearts to receiving or get out of our comfort zone in a way that we have never done before. And so there's almost this negotiation that goes on. And this is the conversation I want to bring first about where intuition defies logic is, can you open to that negotiation process, right? Rather than trying to shove it back down or distract away from it or ignore it, because it's not going anywhere, right? This is the language of your soul speaking to you about what is most true and what is most right for you. And so, can you just entertain that conversation? Can you just open a door and let it in? Doesn't mean you have to take action on it, but can you get curious about it? And, when I was sharing over the break with different people about my trip, yeah, some of the responses and going to India, it was like, there could not have been more of a wet blanket put on my excitement if it was tried. Um, and so, oh gosh, there's so many directions I want to go in with this conversation, but I'm going to come back to that, how to respond or what to do when this happens. Just going to make a little note of that because I can go off in tangents and then not come back. So we're going to come back to that. Okay, I want to talk about grief when it comes to your intuition and following your intuition. In order to be able to let that part of you come to life, for you to give it energy, for you to experience it and its rewards, it is inevitable that at different times there are going to be things that have expired and you're required to let go of. Space needs to be created for new to come in. Now, that space could look like literally needing to take things out of your schedule and not always be on, go, go, go. But it could also be that the space needs to be created because you draw the line with a habit that, if you were to continue, would prevent you from accessing all of the richness and the joy of being able to follow your intuition, right? And I talked about this, to give you like a more tangible example, I talked about this recently in a podcast episode. Let me see if I can even find it. It was around dating, and it was around the boundaries. Yeah, my dating boundaries that changed everything and attracted the love I knew was possible. It's episode 92 on the podcast. This is an example of letting something go and creating space for something new. Is I'm not going to behave in that way anymore, right? And so I'm going to do the inner work to look at what is the root cause of that behavior or automated habit being here in the first place. Following our intuition also, has us, like I just explained with my India trip, has us being misunderstood at times. And that can catch us off guard. That can feel really isolating, particularly if we're somebody who needs a lot of external validation or approval from others, or we really want to be liked by others, or we want to feel like we're the same as other people because that's how we feel connected and that's how we know it's okay to be who we are because they're that too. So it must get the tick of approval. It must be good enough. It must be seen as a success. That's something to be worked with. And that will feel challenging at times. And this is another example of like, can you leave a door open for that? Can you welcome that in as growth? Can you aspire to getting to the point, if you're not there yet, where, like me, it makes you giggle, right? And you can appreciate the differences in people and you can get curious about their mindset and not have to take that on as a judgment about yourself or have that dilute the validity or the worthiness of a direction you want to take your life in, right? The most magnetic thing that creates connection is when you own who you are, even when it's different to somebody else. That actually creates interest and intrigue and curiosity. But if you're not owning who you are, and if you're not clear on why things are important to you or why you're choosing them, it'll be really difficult for you to have those stimulating conversations that build a connection back and forth, right? And so grief is part of this. It's not easy sometimes letting go of what has been to create space for what is coming through and what is true to you. Right. And I explained, some of the negotiations before that I had when my body and soul knew I was going to India, but my mind was like, yeah, not so sure about this actually. Let me just run the risk analysis. So as much as it's a decision that, gosh, excites me so much, that doesn't mean it's always easy or smooth or only exciting to follow through on that. And I don't know that there's enough of a conversation around this with our intuition that it's not just rainbows and skipping down the street with an ice cream. It's character developing. Yeah, it's where you get to meet yourself so deeply and so intimately because it takes you to your edges of your comfort zone and beyond. It teaches you new things about yourself. It teaches you things about the world around you. And if we're only ever shooting for the outcome of the same or certainty or the known, we're definitely not following our intuition, right? It is nurturing us and bringing, parts of us alive and facilitating our evolution when it asks us to get uncomfortable. It's not punishment. And so with that, I also think it's so important to name that this doesn't mean you're going to have an intuitive drop in or hear your intuition and then immediately take action. Definitely not. Sometimes that might feel good, right? If you're at a restaurant and you're getting the intuitive drop in about what you want to eat because you just glanced at the menu and you're like, that's the thing, I'd say you should follow through on that pretty quickly if you're hungry. But if it's a bigger life decision, then give yourself the space to process that and to arrive at accepting it. And that's what I did with this trip to India is I engaged with it, but I didn't like push myself off the cliff and like force myself into it before I was ready. I asked questions, I did research, I let it sit in my body. I got curious about what aligned compromises I needed to make so that this could happen. Yeah, I asked myself what it would be like not to go. And so I think there's just so much importance around letting yourself arrive to being ready to take that undeniable action. Yeah, that your intuition is showing you. And so it's not black and white, it is this dance, and it gets to be a process of, okay, I keep getting this message, or I keep getting this feeling, or I keep having this desire arise, or I keep wondering about this thing, or this theme keeps showing up in my life in different ways, right? How can I engage with that? How can I open a door for that and explore it without forcing myself out of fear that I have to immediately take action on it, right? So that's one end of the scale. And then, of course, we don't want to get caught or stuck in waiting energy either. Like, oh, feels scary. I guess I'll just like wait a bit longer. I think I need another sign. Might just wait a bit longer, right? When I first started my business, I literally had the Nike slogan at the top of my to-do list every day of just do it. Yeah, it was so easy to overthink everything and become overwhelmed with everything. And when I peeled it back, I was like, okay, well, how can I just engage with this today? Like, what's just the next step? Yeah. Because we can use the waiting energy to hide, right? Our inner child pops up and she's like, oh, this is unknown. What if I'm rejected? What if I get it wrong? What if I make a mistake? What if I make this massive mess of my life? What if I make things worse than what they are right now? What if I don't do it good enough? What if it's embarrassing? What if people see me uh, struggling or not knowing what I'm doing? What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if people talk about me? Yeah, I guess I'll just stay the same. I guess I'll just keep ignoring the truth of my soul. And so, if that's coming up for you, then you're being shown your inner child is craving some reparenting and some nurturing and some love so that you can start living life as your full, wise adult woman self. Yeah, without this inner chaos and turmoil and conflict, without feeling like there's something like magnetically drawing you away from the thing that you know is most right and most true for you. Okay. So there's going to be grief. It's okay to give yourself time and space to accept what your truth is and what that's going to look like. And remember to check whether or not you're in this waiting energy and using that as an excuse to not take undeniable action. Because when we do ignore our intuition, there's pretty big costs. And I know that a lot of you listening to this right now are aware of that, and it's why you're listening. there's a huge cost to living against your true self and trying to shove the messages of your soul down, right? And I'm sharing this as always. I feel like this just needs to be like a disclaimer that's pre-recorded at the start of every podcast episode because we have very honest, bullshit-free conversations here. It's the only way I flow. Uh, and that is always done to help highlight to you what it is that you might not be seeing. Because I have personally never had a more frustrating experience in my life than feeling stuck and not being able to see why. That just infuriates me. And so these conversations are not here to create shame or judgment. And so that includes you not shaming or judging yourself, right? These conversations are here for you to connect more with yourself, for you to understand yourself more deeply, right? And so when we're not hearing or listening to our intuition, our soul, the most true expression of ourself, our soul is going to use the mind body to speak to us about that and try and get our attention, right? It's going to use thoughts, emotions, symptoms in an uncomfortable way as a messenger saying, like, hey, there is some very important stuff here that you are ignoring and that you need to look at because there is a life available to you that feels so fucking good and alive. But right now, you're ignoring the truth of who you are, right? And it's time to start looking at that. And this is where the body might go from like a whisper to like a louder voice to screaming, right? It is so like the soul and its messaging through your mind body is so devoted to you living your most full, authentic, true life that is right for you, that lights you up inside, that it's not going anywhere. It will just get louder and louder and louder. And if you find a way to like squash down one problem, it'll just pop up in a different way, right? And I actually want to have this conversation today through a different lens than I ever had before. Uh, I learnt, my meditation teacher taught me this last year in a couple of the courses that I did, uh, which is all Vedic philosophy and wisdom. And she uses the language of this process of creation, 3 stages of creation, maintenance, and destruction, right? So creation, when we are in flow, we're listening to our inner wisdom, our inner compass, and we're living from that. We're honoring that, respecting that, and we are expressing in the world as our true self, right? We're having the conversations that we want to sweep under the rug, right? We're honoring decisions like India for me, you know, that are inconvenient, that feel scary, but are also true, right? And you know, in from this form, I call it choiceless, right? Like I haven't decided that's what I'm going to do. I was shown that that's what is most true for me, and I'm following through on it. And so it's creation. Maintenance is when we have established and created different experiences, parts to our life, and we're consolidating those. Yeah, we're feeding those. They're still so relevant and so true for us. But they won't always be because nothing is forever, right? We're here to evolve. And so when we ignore our intuition, destruction is going to take place. And so you've heard me speak many times before on the podcast about how the mind body will do that for us. It will, you know, send us into overthinking or spiraling thoughts, or insomnia will pop up, or, you know, fatigue or burnout or migraines or gut issues, right? Acne. I had so much painful adult acne over my face in my 20s, my late 20s. That's showing up saying, hey, this is not your path. Please listen so you can come back to it. And so this destruction only actually needs to take place when we refuse to listen. Yeah. When we continue to use coping mechanisms like people pleasing, emotional eating, perfectionism, overachieving, striving, trying to prove something, um, not having boundaries, making decisions and creating a life out of fear, right? All of that is going to cause an eruption, and destruction is going to need to happen. One, because we are not creating it in a harmonious way for ourselves, where we do more of a transition, right? Where, you know, the job we're in, it's expired, it's not right for us anymore, it's not true for us anymore. Uh, the relationship dynamics, they need to shift and change. So a hard, honest conversation with connection-based communication needs to take place. Maybe a relationship actually needs to end altogether. It's come to completion, it's served its purpose. Maybe the location you're living in is no longer right for you, right? There's so many different ways. Maybe it's our nutrition plan or the lack thereof that is no longer right for us. And so destruction comes in to show us that way of feeding our body has served its purpose and it needs to end. It needs to destruct so that something can take its place. I think I might have said this already, but like different identities, different iterations of ourselves, even our values shift and change throughout our life, right? What I value here today is completely different to what I valued a decade ago and 2 decades ago. Wildly different. Yeah. I only have to look at a photo of myself to see that. And so when we don't follow our intuition and learn how to trust ourselves, destruction is going to take place. And here is where it becomes very painful and a lot of suffering happens. It's when we're feeling like life is against us because it's just one thing after another. Oh, I can't believe this has just happened. Oh, and now this has just happened. Oh, would you believe it? Like now I've got this parking fine, and now, motherhood is just feeling so laborious and so difficult, right? I can't seem to shift these migraines. I never seem to have time for this business that I'm trying to start. Like all these things just keep popping up in the way. Or, I only ever meet the same type of guy, or I don't seem to ever get any matches on dating apps. Or, when I date someone, it only goes so far before it all starts to like collapse or go wrong. And what happens is we incorrectly focus on the destruction and try and get things back to the way that they were before the destruction started happening, or we try and manage the destruction better. When actually the destruction is there to show us it's time to start creating something new. It's time to do things in a fresh way. What would feel inspiring amongst all of this mess? Yeah, rather than trying to protect everything and stick it back together, and find ease in doing things the same way, what could liberate you and create freedom and joy? Maybe not immediately, but what could be the first step toward that? Of doing things in a different way that have you connected to what feels true for you, even, we'll go back to where this conversation started, if there are things to grieve amongst that, or if there are things to take ownership of that feel really fucking scary, and you might not even have any idea of where to begin, right? The beginning is opening the door and letting yourself speak and engage with that concept or with that idea. Right? When we do this, we're so taken care of. When we just let ourselves just taste, what our intuition is showing us energetically, the flow around us of what is happening begins to shift and change. All of a sudden, a book that is on the exact topic you're struggling with that completely transforms your understanding of that topic is falling in your lap. Yeah. Or a friend is like, I'm done with this book. Do you want to, or I've just read this amazing book. Do you want to read this? Or, yeah, this happened to me last year. I was house sitting and I just picked up this book, inverted commas, randomly off a friend's bookshelf and started reading it. Right. And I'm just going to keep coming back to like opening the door to letting yourself explore something beyond, okay, how do I actually just continue to engage with this destruction? What would it be like to engage with creation instead? And, for me, this has shown up definitely in the past. Like I would just wait so long to have conversations, or I wouldn't have them at all. I would silence my own voice. I'd apologize for having feelings, or I wouldn't have the conversation because I'd be like, well, I'm just going to cry, or, um, I'm just going to shut down. And so that's not okay. So I guess I just can't have the conversation. Or I waited too long to end relationships, right? I was too curious about the potential of a partnership or intimate relationship when really, if I had have trusted myself, I knew a lot earlier, right? It's happened to me with careers that haven't been right for me that I've needed to make a change with. And, just to use that as an example, that doesn't mean you quit your job like tomorrow or even next month. It might for some of you, right? But that could mean that you really commit and show up to a 6 or 12 month plan that liberates you to follow your intuition over that period of time, right? Remember, it gets to be a process. And so I want to finish this conversation with a couple of like permission slips for you, right? And we're not going to overcomplicate this or go in new directions. I really want to reiterate that grief and acceptance and the process to getting to acceptance are allowed to be part of you following your intuition. Please don't shame yourself or judge yourself or ridicule or be nasty to yourself about how long it might be taking you or how slow you might feel, right? Are you still heading in that direction? Are you being honest with yourself at each opportunity? And remember that awareness is not the same as action. We're allowed to become aware of something and then process it. Maybe even like I just explained with the job example, put a plan in place rather, and then the undeniable action starts to happen, right? And then this second permission piece, I want to circle back to what I was saying about the wet blanket on what was exciting for me. Uh, your authenticity, right? Your most authentic, true self, which is formed from trusting your intuition, following your intuition. Well, it's not formed from there, but it's expressed from there into the physical, tangible form, which you then get to enjoy. It's not a fire hose. It can be a sprinkler. And here's what I mean by that. Particularly if you're in earlier stages of really discovering, who am I and what is right for me? And how do I want to go about building my life from that place? You do not at any point need to go out into the world and feel like you have to be speaking your truth and answering every question authentically and sharing all of the real you in every single moment, right? So it's like having the fire hose on where you're just like blasting everyone and everything with your authenticity. Like, cool if that works for you, right? But for a lot of us, and this was true for me at first too, that was intimate, that was private, that was for me. because I wasn't yet surrounded by people who knew how to celebrate me and encourage me and support me. And I didn't yet have the skills to speak up and advocate for myself and ask that of them or share with them, actually, your opinion is not welcome here. Thank you, but no thank you. And so you're allowed for that to look like a little garden sprinkler instead of the fire hose. Pick and choose who you are sharing your most intimate details with. Who are the people that can uplift and support you? And if you don't have those, where can you maybe find them? I'm telling you, if you go to a workshop at your local yoga studio, or if you find yourself inside Reveal and Rise, you're immediately going to have those people around you, right? They can be strangers that have shared values and therefore have the capacity to understand you and listen to you and support you, right? Because it is like your most true, authentic, vulnerable soul expression. It is a privilege for someone to be on the receiving end of that, right? You don't have to be at a point like me where, it's a foundation of my contribution to the world that I have a podcast and a YouTube channel and an Instagram account where I talk about and use myself as an example to teach these things, and way more intimately with my clients as well, right? And so that may have been something that has felt like a lot of pressure or a lot of stress or burden for you without you even realizing it, right? And so maybe ask that question of, okay, well, if I don't have to be a fire hose, how can I be the garden sprinkler in following my intuition and in sharing that with the right people? Yeah. Because not everyone finds the wet blanket experiences entertaining, and that's okay. And so you're allowed to protect yourself from that, right? You're allowed to be intentional with who you do and don't share with. I want to finish up with giving you a little practical tool. I love giving you high quality questions that you can go away and journal with. If you know how to connect with your subconscious, with your inner child, this can be brilliant as well. And the question is this: where are you trying to fix destruction that is actually necessary in your life right now instead of embrace creation? So where are you putting your energy into fixing necessary destruction instead of embracing creation? Yeah. I'm going to leave you with that one, my love. Oh, and don't forget the party bonuses. If you've been curious about Reveal and Rise, let's chat. Again, the link will be in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, have a look below in the caption and let's connect and have a little chat. Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.